All right, let's start. You wake up on a random Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no crisis. You check your phone, half asleep, thumb automatically opening your bank app, not because you're panicking, but because that's just what you do now. And the number staring back at you is something past you would have lost their mind over. Maybe your salary is 6 figures. Maybe you crossed that $100,000 mark recently. Maybe you've been there for a year or two. And yet, your stomach still tightens a little. You're not broke. You're not struggling in the obvious way. Rent gets paid, groceries go through. You can say yes to dinner plans without doing mental gymnastics first. But there's this quiet, annoying feeling that follows you around. This sense that you should feel richer than this, safer than this, more relaxed than this. Instead, you're lying in bed thinking, why does this still feel tight? Because on paper, $100,000 is supposed to be the finish line, or at least a big one. It's the number people throw around like it solves everything. Hit 6 figures and you're good. You made it. You can breathe now. But honestly, you hit it and life just kept going. The same worries, different font. And yeah, I spend way too much time thinking about money like this. Not just the numbers, but the psychology behind it. Why we can objectively be doing well and still feel behind. Why some people feel calm on half this income and others feel constantly on edge making way more. I've gone down a lot of late-night rabbit holes trying to understand why money rarely feels the way we expect it to feel. And if you're in your 30s especially, this question hits harder. Because $100,000 doesn't feel rich. Sometimes it barely feels like enough. Which sounds insane if you say it out loud, and yet, here we are. So in this video, I want to unpack why that is. Not in a you should budget better kind of way, but in a deeper, more honest way. The kind that actually explains why your nervous system hasn't caught up to your paycheck, why your lifestyle feels heavier than your income, and why this feeling isn't a personal failure, even though it kind of feels like one. By the end of this, I want you to understand what's really going on, and more importantly, how to stop feeling like you're constantly one unexpected expense away from unraveling even when you're technically doing everything right. So let's talk about it, slowly, honestly, like two people admitting something they don't usually say out loud. The first thing we need to talk about is the lie we were all sold about numbers. At some point, usually in our teens or early 20s, $100,000 became this magical figure. It was the rich uncle number, the my parents would be proud number, the I don't have to stress anymore number. You imagined it like a light switch. Below it, stress. Above it, peace. But money doesn't work like that, not even close. Because income doesn't exist in a vacuum. It never did. What changed is that your responsibilities grew at the exact same time your income did, maybe even faster. When you were 22, $100,000 meant freedom, a decent apartment, travel, eating out, maybe saving a little and still having room to mess up. When you're 32, $100,000 means something very different. It means housing, insurance, retirement, emergencies, maybe kids, maybe parents, maybe health stuff you didn't think about before. The numbers stayed the same, the weight attached to it did not. I remember talking to someone who finally hit 6 figures and said, I thought I'd feel rich, but instead I just feel responsible. And that stuck with me. Because that's the real shift. Money stops being about what you can buy and starts being about what you have to cover. It's no longer fun money, it's structural money. And structure is expensive. You're not paying for luxuries, you're paying for stability. And stability has a monthly subscription fee that never seems to increase. This matters because a lot of people internalize this discomfort as failure. Like, if I make this much and still feel stressed, something must be wrong with me. But the truth is, the stress didn't come from mismanaging money, it came from finally seeing the full picture. When you're broke, your world is small. You focus on this week, this bill, this paycheck. When you earn more, your world expands. You start thinking long-term. And long-term thinking is heavy. So, if $100,000 feels underwhelming, it's not because you're ungrateful, it's because you're finally seeing how much life actually costs when you take it seriously. The takeaway here is simple but uncomfortable. The goalpost didn't move because you're greedy, it moved because your life did. Understanding that helps you stop blaming yourself for a feeling that is honestly a pretty rational response to adulthood. Now let's talk about lifestyle creep, but not in the way people usually do. Most advice frames lifestyle creep like it's the sneaky villain, like you got a raise and immediately started buying dumb stuff, a nicer car, more expensive clothes, fancy coffee, and now you're shocked that you're broke again. But that's not what actually happens for most people in their 30s. What really creeps is not luxury, it's baseline. You didn't upgrade because you wanted to flex, you upgraded because your old setup stopped working. You needed a quieter place to live, a safer neighborhood, a car that doesn't randomly die, health insurance that actually covers things, groceries that don't make you feel awful all the time. None of that feels indulgent, it feels responsible. And the thing is, once you raise your baseline, it's very hard to lower it without feeling like you're failing or going backward. So every raise you get doesn't feel like progress, it feels like maintenance. You're not moving up, you're just keeping up. I once heard someone describe it as running on a treadmill that slowly inclines without telling you. You're still running, you're still moving, but you're way more tired than you expected to be. This matters because it explains why $100,000 feels thin. It's not that you're bad with money, it's that your money is already assigned before it even hits your account. It has jobs, responsibilities, commitments. So when people say, just don't inflate your lifestyle, it sounds good in theory, but in practice, a lot of inflation is just adulthood showing up. The real takeaway here is awareness, not guilt. If you know your baseline has grown, you can stop expecting your income to feel like free money, and you can start planning around reality instead of nostalgia. Another big reason $100,000 feels poor in your 30s is the comparison. And yeah, we all know comparison is bad, we've heard it a million times, but knowing something intellectually doesn't stop it from messing with your head. Here's the problem. You're no longer comparing yourself to where you came from, you're comparing yourself to people who are ahead of you. In your 30s, your peer group splits. Some people are just getting started, some people are quietly doing extremely well, and social media makes sure you only see the highlight reel of the second group. You see the house, the vacations, the "we just bought our second property" posts, and you're sitting there thinking, I make good money, why do I feel behind? Because $100,000 puts you in a weird middle zone. You're doing better than most, but not as well as the people you're now exposed to. So instead of feeling accomplished, you feel average, or worse, slightly behind. And your brain hates being average. This matters because comparison changes how money feels emotionally. It's not about sufficiency anymore, it's about status, about trajectory, about whether you're winning adulthood. The takeaway here is brutal but freeing. You can't feel rich if you're measuring yourself against people who are richer. No number will ever be enough if your reference point keeps climbing. Sometimes the fix isn't earning more, it's shrinking the mental room those comparisons take up in your head. Let's talk about time, because this one sneaks up on you. In your 30s, money stops being about possibility and starts being about runway. When you're younger, you think in open-ended timelines. You have time to fix mistakes, time to earn more later, time to figure it out. At some point, that shifts. You start doing math in your head without realizing it. Retirement math, family math, health math. How many good working years do I actually have left? What if something goes wrong? What if I don't want to do this forever? Suddenly, $100,000 doesn't feel like abundance, it feels like a calculation. And calculations are stressful. This matters because money anxiety in your 30s is often not about today, it's about the future crashing into the present. You're not worried about this month, you're worried about the next 30 years. The takeaway is compassion. If you feel more pressure now than you did making less, it's not because you're worse at handling money, it's because you're finally thinking far enough ahead for the stakes to feel real. Another piece people don't talk about enough is that $100,000 is a gross number, not a lived one. Taxes hit, benefits come out, rent or a mortgage takes a huge chunk, health insurance, retirement contributions if you're trying to be responsible. What you actually live on is much less, but mentally you still think in gross numbers. So there's this constant disconnect between what you make and what you can actually use. That gap creates frustration. You feel like the money should stretch further, like you're doing something wrong, but a lot of it just disappears into systems you don't directly feel. The takeaway here is practical. Start thinking in net numbers, in real, usable money. It won't magically make you richer, but it will make your expectations more realistic. And that alone can lower stress. Now let's zoom out. The biggest reason $100,000 feels poor in your 30s is because money doesn't buy what you actually want anymore. When you were younger, money meant stuff and experiences. Now it means safety, optionality, peace of mind. And those things are expensive. Worse, they're invisible. You don't feel them the way you feel a new phone or a trip. You feel their absence. You feel them only when something goes wrong and you're able to handle it. So you're spending a lot of money to avoid pain, not to create pleasure. And avoidance spending never feels satisfying. This matters because it explains the emotional flatness. You're doing all the right things, but nothing feels rewarding. Because the reward is a crisis that didn't happen. The takeaway is to intentionally carve out some money for joy. Real joy. Not status stuff, not obligation spending. Actual things that make life feel lighter. Because otherwise, all your money goes toward preventing bad outcomes, and that's a bleak way to live. So what do you actually do with all this? First, stop waiting for a number to make you feel secure. It won't. Security comes from systems, not salaries. Second, define what enough means for you. Not culturally, not comparatively, personally. Third, acknowledge that feeling this way doesn't mean you failed. It means you're awake. You're seeing money clearly for the first time. Not as a fantasy, but as a tool. A limited one, a powerful one, a stressful one. And finally, be patient with yourself. Your nervous system needs time to catch up to your reality. You spent years in survival mode. It doesn't turn off overnight just because the paycheck changed. Let's wrap this up. If $100,000 still feels poor in your 30s, you're not broken. You're not bad with money. You're not ungrateful. You're living in a world where the cost of stability has gone up, expectations have shifted, and the emotional weight of money has changed. The goal isn't to chase a bigger number and hope it fixes the feeling. The goal is to understand the feeling so it stops running your life. Money is supposed to support you, not constantly test you. And the moment you stop asking, why doesn't this feel like enough, and start asking, what do I actually need to feel okay, is the moment things begin to shift. Quietly, slowly, for real. And honestly, that's a better kind of rich anyway.